Hey everyone, I'm back with a new topic for optimizing Ivy, some of her more obscure edge guarding options. While Ivy has a pretty good edge guarding kit, even if you're just using her moves the way that seem intuitive to most people, me dealing them with up air and down air, or knocking them away with back air, she also has some really strong tools that I don't see people using as much, so I wanted to make a video on them. I'll do my best to tie these techniques together as best I can in terms of how they can be used in various situations, but this is largely just a collection of unrelated techniques that I wanted people to know about. So here goes. Probably the most well-known thing I'm going to cover in this video is what's been termed the mock fair, which is where you're standing near the ledge and you time your forward air so that the tip of the aerial hits below the ledge and pops the opponent up if they're trying to sweet spot. It takes a little bit of practice to figure out when you need to start your fastfall to get the right timing and hitbox, but because fair pops up really well, this is a super important counter to characters that Ivy would normally struggle to edgeguard, like Game & Watch. In addition, when you don't have time to get to ledge, because you're running off stage or for some other reason, it's probably our fastest and strongest on-stage edgeguard by a fair amount. Because the tipper hitbox on fair pops opponents up super well, it can be pretty free to get a follow-up afterwards. On fast fallers, your best bet is typically the down smash, since it sends at a nasty angle and sets up for pretty easy edge guards afterwards, even if it doesn't kill outright. And on floaties, it can pop them up for an up air, up B, beam, or really anything you feel like, depending on what percent the character's at. While this is a really strong tool against characters that typically try to recover by sweet spotting below the ledge, there is some counterplay. As you can see Thunders do here, it's possible to SDI into the wall of the stage and tech the fair, which will often throw off your timing and edge guarding them, and generally make it a lot more difficult to actually complete the edge guard. This is slightly related in that it's a possible punish after Mock Fair pops up your opponent, but it's also just something very relevant to Ivy's offstage game in general. Ivy has the ability to combo her weak fair into the reverse hit of bear that sends opponents in front of her, instead of comboing into something like dare or footstool. You need to hit them with the kind of Ivy's belly when you do the bear to get the right hitbox, but when you fight a character with a strong vertical recovery, dare or footstool won't get you very much, and reverse bear can not only push them out further out horizontally, but can also sometimes kill if you've carried them out close to the blast zone, especially because people typically tend to DI weak fair out if they're trying to avoid getting dared. Having covered this mix-up, let's talk about two things that you can do should you choose to edgeguard off stage that I don't see a lot of Ivies doing. The first one is drop zone nair. When you fall into someone while using nair, you can fast fall and drag them down, falling through them before the final hitbox of nair with actual knockback comes out, which means that they just kind of get dragged down while stuck in hit stun, because of how fast Ivy can reel into the ledge, we can usually recover before they do and ledge hog them. It's a really strong gimping tool that, unlike up air or dare, isn't subject to meteor canceling. And because nair comes out on frame 4 and stays out for really long, there's a lot of flexibility in timing your drop zone to disrupt recoveries. Its primary weakness is that it doesn't have a disjointed hitbox, so while it's great against characters like Falcon, who won't be able to beat out on nair with a hitbox while trying to recover, you need to avoid trading with moves like Morph's up B that do have a hitbox on them if you're trying to drop zone nair. So either calling out a double jump or doing it before they start their up B. The other tool that I'd like to see people using more in edge guarding is first hit bear. Because bear is a 2-hit move where the first hit is intended to link into the second, the first hit sends opponents basically nowhere while putting them in hit stun, which means that when they're off stage, they just fall without being sent anywhere, kind of like what we just discussed with drop zone nair. You can do this from on stage by fast falling your bear so that you land before the second hit comes out, which also happens to hit below ledge if timed correctly. Or you can do it off stage by fast falling the bear so that you're below them by the time that the second hit comes out. At high percents, or on characters with bad vertical recoveries, this can be a death sentence without touching them at all after that. But on the rest of the cast, it forces them to fall lower and cuts off more options that they have to recover at various angles, making finishing the job that much easier. This is also just a really good thing to be aware of, because I've seen players who will attempt to SDI Ivy's bear if hit off stage so that they don't get hit by the second part and knocked further away from the ledge. So if you're trying to edge guard and an opponent SDI's bear correctly, you need to know what your options are from that situation. The last thing I'll cover in this video is using up air from ledge as an edge guard. I covered the technique itself in my episode on up air, but didn't really talk about this aspect of it. If timed correctly, you can use the immediate spike hitbox to edgeguard an opponent while landing on stage, like you can see South doing here. And it's also likely Ivy's strongest consistent punish against recoveries like Marth or Sheik, where your goal is to force them on stage and punish their ending lag, since you can up air onto them and either begin a flop lock, or if their percent is too high, then go for something like an up smash after they get popped up. This is something that some people do already, but I also see a lot of Ivy's autopilot when they have the chance to punish in this situation and go for something much weaker like fair from ledge, so I just wanted to mention it. This will probably be the last optimizing Ivy for a little while, just because I've kind of run out of topics that I think are generally applicable and helpful to most Ivies. I might do a long video at some point about her combo game in general, but until then, this will probably be the last one for a little bit. So as always, thank you for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed.